and this is the central square itself, which in 2011 is a place for people to come. We have very few places like this in the United States. A central square in a city where people just come in and hang out. This is Renaissance urban planning. Mental maps of the world. Here's a map of the world from 1470. Basically shows Afro-Eurasia. And it's a flat map. It's a two-dimensional map, correct? And this is the type of world map that replaced that two-dimensional map after Columbus and Magellan. But, so, I mean, in terms of understanding the influence of the Renaissance in world history, just think about this notion of your mental map of the world. Do you live on a two-dimensional space, or do you live on this? Huge. That's huge change. Huge. Okay, conclusions. You can read these. I've made all these points. Lecture has presented a polycentric view. In other words, in many of the examples of the Italian Renaissance, I demonstrated how many other global regions were directly or indirectly involved. That's an important understanding of world history. The Renaissance was directly influenced by many events outside of Western Europe, such as, I mean, have you thought about this? The Italian Renaissance influenced by the rise of Islam in the 7th century, the Silk Roads, the Mongol Empire, the Crusades, the Ottoman Empire, and the voyages of exploration. If you start to think along those lines, then you're leaving this lecture with a basic understanding of what world historians are interested in. Renaissance had major influence in Spain, and this one I think is important. These are some of the central world history themes that this presentation has demonstrated. Long-distance trade in the Mediterranean and Central Asia, cross-regional war, the Crusades, cultural diffusion, as in Oaxaca, imperialism, many examples of that, exploration, and colonialism. What is common in all of these? They are processes that are not limited to one place. They are developments that link people over long distances, and that's what world historians are really interested in. Okay. So recommended readings, if you'd like to do some reading here, the first one, Abu Baghdad, Beyond European Hegemony, makes the point about the influence of the demise of the Mongol road system and how it led into Columbus and Magellan, looking for other ways to get to China and India other than across Central Asia. The Renaissance Bazaar by Broughton is essentially about the Renaissance in global context. Much of what I've demonstrated here. And Crosby, The Measure of Reality, is about Western Europeans taking Hindu and Arabic and Greek mathematics in early modern history and using them as the basis for the rise of the West. They're really, I've read them all, they're excellent books. If I had one to read, I'd read Crosby. So, the floor is open for any discussion. Anything you'd like to ask or comment?
First, I'd just like to thank you.
Pleasure. Yes, please.
Not to be morbid, I'm a little interested in Black Death. Who brought it where? From Mongolia to Europe, or Europe to Mongolia, or was it just something that sort of was pervasive all over the place?
No, Black Death has its origin here, Central Asia.
Okay.
Central Asia has been forgotten about until quite recently. Actually, world historians have brought this into the forefront in terms of understanding world history. Black Death started here in the 13th century. It it spread from prairie dogs or whatever they have out there, like prairie dogs, to humans somehow mutated, and then was taken along the trade routes. I mean, huge problem with Black Death in China, huge. Middle East, Eastern Europe, but then into Sicily and southern Italy by the same forces that brought in the products that, you know, it's interesting, in many of the world history books there's a map of the spread of the Black Death, bubonic plague, but it starts in Constantinople. It leaves, it leaves all of Asia out. Well, no, this was the origin over here.
You know, it's so ironic. I had a Canadian student living with us this past fall, and she said that they had a great export market in Alberta of prairie dogs and guinea pig-sized rodents to China because they thought they were really cute pets. And so, you know, you saying that it came from Central Asia and then spread the Black Death, and here it is in 2010.
What's interesting is to contrast the medical response or the cultural response of people here to the bubonic plague and people here. And the first quarantine, the first hospitals to quarantine people were in Cairo, in North Africa. Anything else, folks?
Yeah, following up on the Black Plague, because I was going to ask the same thing with the Mongol roads and all. I mean, it decimates a population. Is there a benefit to that? I mean, there's like, you know, more resources for less people. You know, we're not all, when populations expand too much, competition for the resources starts to get a little tough, and maybe the wealth can't be distributed. I mean, I'm not saying wealth was distributed evenly earlier on, but even if you wanted to, it's tough when the population's large. Is there a benefit to this decimation of the population?
Well, if you were a serf in the 14th century in what's today called Germany, France, Ireland, so on, there was a benefit because there was such a huge drop in the population that labor was the value of labor rose tremendously. So you could sell your services and do a lot better, maybe 2 or 3 generations after the Black Death. It was a partial cause, partial, I'm saying, of the Reformation, for sure. Is that good or bad? You decide. Okay, I don't want to get into any trouble here. I mean, Catholic priests ran away. Some of them ran away. Just took off. And all the prayers that people had really didn't help them out too much. So, okay, that's one of the results. Mongol Empire in China was ended by the Black Death, so the Chinese thought it was great. In the long run, they got the Mongols the heck out of there. Okay. Robert McNeill has a really good book. McNeill, Scottish, McNeill, Plagues and Peoples. That would have much more on it. Plagues and Peoples. Anything else, folks?
I just, you talked so much about trade. It really made me think, I don't know if this is more a question for Doug or for you, but it made me think, it sounds like there's math that was developed and sort of evolved as a result of trade and accounting and managing money and that kind of thing. And then there was a whole bunch of math that was evolving because of building and engineering. And so in some ways, are those very different branches of math, or is it all intertwined, or?
I'll defer to Doug on that one.
Yeah, I see it as 2 different branches. I mean, like applied and theoretical. Of course, they're related.
When you say applied and theoretical, isn't the money stuff applied as well as the engineering?
Exactly.
So what's the theoretical?
Theoretical is like the geometry, finding new results that aren't necessarily useful.
When you
So-
talked about like the murder, the guys that you were talking about, were those more in the theoretical realm?
That was in the theoretical.
And then do people figure out a way to then apply them to actual buildings or to money making or stuff like that?
That pretty much happens all the time. The mathematicians take Pythagoras, or his predecessors, because I've talked about how Pythagoras is about 500 BCE.